Good afternoon. My name is Marija Stojanović, and you're watching the screening by the European Western Balkans here at the Belgrade Security Conference 2024 Coffee Break. Our guest is Mr. Filip Reeker, Chair of the Wilson Center Global Europe Program. Mr. Reeker, welcome, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Marija, thank you. I'm very pleased to be here at the Belgrade Security Conference.
My first question is, to your knowledge, to what extent will the US be involved in the Belgrade-Pristina Dialogue after the re-election of Donald Trump? Do you expect the more active approach, the more active role of the US in this process?
You know, I'm really not in a position to give you any particular insight. I retired from the US diplomatic service over a year ago. So I haven't been involved. I'm with the Wilson Center think tank, and I do consultancy and advisory with the Albright-Stonebridge Group, part of DGA from Washington. I do believe that the U.S. will continue to be interested in the region. But if you listen to what President-elect Trump had to say in his campaign, I don't think I heard a whole lot about the Balkans. I don't think it's going to be a high priority, because there's so many other big challenges facing a new administration in a very complex geopolitical world. So I think the better question would be, what are the Western Balkans? What are Serbia and Kosovo going to do for America, than thinking only about what we may do for that? And that includes the dialogue, which I hope will continue and produce some results.
To your knowledge, is the idea of the land swap as a possible solution for Kosovo's issue definitely off the table, as it is claimed by some EU officials?
Look, I couldn't tell you what's on or off what table. I worked with Cathy Ashton, now Baroness Ashton, who was at that time the High Representative of the European Commission, on the dialogue process that she led. And the United States supported that EU-led dialogue between Serbia and Kosovo. And I've traveled frequently between the countries and to Brussels, consulted with others, and tried to find solutions through this diplomatic process. And we had success. We had the Brussels Agreement, which looked like it would produce some real progress. And I think it did for a time, but for more than a decade, we've seen stalling. Some of the old issues have never been resolved. Some of the aspects of that agreement have never been implemented. There were various discussions later about what could be proposed, what the two countries proposed. If you're talking about two sovereign states, then I think they can come up with ideas for themselves about what they want to do. That's part of the authority, the privilege of sovereignty. So I can't predict for you what will happen, but I think finding ways to bring an end to these ongoing frozen conflicts, the disruption it causes, and thinking more about how we can get beyond is probably worth doing. Sometimes the things that seem most impossible or not practical can actually prove to be good possibilities. So get back to the table and let's think about what should be on that table and how you can make progress.
You also talked about the mutual recognition as a possible solution to this dispute. Have you changed your mind meanwhile?
Well,
and
I think
what will it apply to your knowledge? In your opinion?
Well, again, I don't represent any government. I'm not involved in the process anymore. I think maybe people can get too hung up on concepts of recognition. What does that really mean? You have people that want to live their lives and get on with their lives. They want to live securely and feel safe in their daily lives, to practice their religion, to take care of their families, to raise their children and their grandchildren, to have opportunities at prosperity. That's really what people want, and that should be what governance is basically about. I've learned maybe as I'm now out of these processes, that a lot of these concepts like recognition really don't count for a whole lot. Better to think about what you can do to really move things ahead and start checking problems off your list.
And are you an optimist that some long-lasting solution to Kosovo's issues can be reached anytime soon?
I'm always an optimist on that. I believe that all of the issues in the Western Balkans can be resolved to the extent that issues anywhere can be. There are always going to be issues and disputes, but the great promise is that by sitting down together and finding agreements with which both can live, by showing certain flexibility, by thinking deeply about what really matters, you can move on. And I think the Brussels agreement gave great opportunity in that regard, because it showed some hard work on the part of both sides, from Pristina, from Belgrade, with the support of the international community, including the United States. This is a European question. This is the heart of Europe. The United States has always wanted to see a Europe whole, free, and at peace, and I think we'll always support that concept. But I do think people have got to be conscious of other things that are on the priority list for the new administration. And President-elect Trump has been fairly clear about what he thinks needs to take place first.
And what are the key priorities?
Well, he's talked about ending wars. Of course, you have a horrific war really right on your borders. I mean, it's not far from here to where the fighting is taking place in Ukraine after Putin's unprovoked attack against Ukraine, his effort to sort of wipe out Ukraine as an independent nation. And let's hope we can see an end to that. We can see a negotiating table, which is where most wars begin to end. Bring an end to the violence, to the death, to the horrific destruction and economic loss, and instead focus on how differences and concerns can be addressed in other matters. I think that'll be a priority. The economy is clearly a priority. President-elect Trump ran on a platform that talked about America first. He is backed by a voting constituency that has embraced a level of isolationism, which has run throughout American history. And I think you'll see a little bit of that, questioning why are U.S. taxpayers expending money on certain efforts where they don't see a result for the United States. And so I go back to my original premise, which is maybe many countries want to ask what they can do for and with the United States, rather than just what's the United States going to do for you.
Thank you. 3 years ago, you stated that the Russian Federation capitalized on this region's history of political and ethnic divisions. What is your assessment of the current influence of Russia in the Western Balkans? And do you expect any change to take place during the second presidency of Donald Trump when it comes to the impact of both Russia and China here?
Well, I do think Russia, particularly under Vladimir Putin, has a long tradition of trying to stir conflicts. They don't like settled situations. They like frozen conflicts. They like disruption. They like keeping a certain level of uncertainty. They do that by manipulating news, by using social media, by getting involved, as they have even in the United States, in trying to disrupt elections and other democratic processes. I think that shows a certain level of insecurity and weakness on their part. And frankly, Russia would be better if it focused on itself and how Russia, which should be a great country, the Russian people deserve, to have opportunities and options instead of being considered pariahs in so many ways, and be a constructive part of the broader European family and the global leadership role that Russia did have. Russia was part of the G8. Russia's leaders sat at the table with the leaders of the other major economies, and that was lost because of their action first in 2014 and then, of course, in 2022. with the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So we'll have a new U.S. administration. We have a new European Commission. We have a relatively new government in the United Kingdom. We've had other elections throughout Europe, but around the world. More than half of humanity went to polls or had the opportunity to cast ballots in 2024. We won't have a new leader in Moscow. Hopefully he will see the opportunity to do better for Russia as well, by allowing some peace and stability throughout this region and across Europe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reeker, for taking time to speak to us.
Pleasure.
Thank you for watching.